Welcome to part 10, everyone. Rotten to the core. Are you ready for more? Enjoy the show. Don't forget the pelvic soup bowl. Don't forget that the colon is a second brain. Don't forget that your spine has spinal fluid, and that fluid has more light, more information, more communication for your brain, tells your brain where you're at. But what if the communication was toxic? What if the communication was toxic? And that main communication we know comes from the large intestine, which then goes where? Creates the energy, and whatever that energy is, whatever those vibrations, those frequencies are, goes down in and goes up through the coccyx into the spinal fluid and up to your brain. And understand something, you're either going to retrain your brain to take your life back, or you'll be on the pain train for the rest of your life. So let's take a look at the amazing Holy Grail, and that's your large intestine. Okay, take a look at this first slide, balloon sigmoid. Now understand something. Like I said before, this is the normal, average majority of the population. As you can see with this balloon sigmoid, if you take a look at where the red section is, you'll see 3 bumps. Those 3 bumps are the diverticuli that I was talking about. Now, those diverticuli can actually become diverticulitis, which mean inflammation. And that's only because there's so much pressure there, chemical and physical pressure, that we're getting an actual blowout like a tire. So understand that. Now, think about this. What do you think would happen? Now, your sigmoid is on the left side of your body, okay? It also is about the last, it's in around the last 8 inches, okay, of the body. It's about actually 4 to 5 inches long, okay? Now, we know that there's impaction, there's waste, it's putrefying, it's rotting. So where do you think most of the infection would lie? Well, it would lie probably on your left side, wouldn't it? So what do you think would happen? Well, you might have pain down in your lower pelvis. You could have cysts on your ovaries. Definitely you're creating endometriosis and scar tissue. And even men get scar tissue, but guess what? They don't have all of those organs and those things going on, so it doesn't show that much. But understand something. This inflammation that we're getting from the infection is actually causing scar tissue, and it's going to build up, and it's especially going to build up on the pubic bone as well. You know your pubic bone comes across, right? Well, on the left side of the pubic bone, you'll actually see that it's higher. But the more scar tissue and displaced calcium you have, the more that you will have what we call the camel's hump. Because the pubic bone, you shouldn't be able to feel it, and it shouldn't have a hump on it. Go figure, eh? Now, seeing that on the sigmoid is the left side, you're going to see that this person could have swelling in their ankles. They could have knee pain or knee problems, or they need knee surgery. But definitely we know something, that eventually, if that were to continue, that person would end up with prostate problems, ovarian problems, and especially on the left side, left ovary, and fallopian tube on the left side. Okay, there you go. And then also, what's a big one? Well, remember what I said before, you'll probably end up having hip surgery, or your hips are going to be really stiff, but the stiffest hip will be on the left side. So that's what a balloon sigmoid is going to get you. And not talking about all the rest of the discomfort. So let's go to the next slide. So we talked about diverticuli, didn't we? Okay? So understand something. The condition, okay, of having diverticula is diverticulosis. Oh my God, you've got diverticulosis. Well, what you've got is chronic constipation, and you're blowing out that part of the bowel that the stagnation in the waste was there for so long. And the itis, diverticulitis, just means inflammation. So diverticula, that is the condition, and or diverticuli is the one. And then itis means it's got inflammation. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's not a disease. A disease is just a symptom. And disease names are just to show us where things are. diseases aren't the end of the world. And the diseases are going to get more symptomatic, and you're going to have more pain and more suffering with the mistreatment. And you're going to get mistreated in life, even if you go the natural route, if you don't learn how to bring it home, if you don't learn how to look after yourself. And that's the reality. Let's move on. We talked about polyps, and like I said, a polyp is what? It's like a wart in the intestines. You're never going to get a polyp, okay, unless, which is like a mushroom growing in your intestines, unless you create the same type of atmosphere that would create a wart and create a mushroom. So it's dark, lots of manure, rotting. That's what grows mushrooms. Tell me I'm wrong. You go pick wild mushrooms and you'll find them wherever the cow poop is. You'll find lots of mushrooms. Okay, so stagnation of waste. So let's get rid of the waste, bring back the circulation, bring back the flow, and those polyps will shrink. Go ahead, get them cut off. See how well that goes. I would never do it. I would never get my polyp cut off, but that's my personal opinion. Do whatever you want to do, because when you cut it, you bleed. More infection could get in there. And understand something. The more you mess around inside the large intestine, the more complications that can happen. Okay? All right? How many people go for colon tests where they put the camera up into the intestine, where they have you drinking all of these things to try to clean your bowel out? Understand something right now. Myself, I will never do it because I know how to look after myself. But I can understand if you don't look after yourself, you'll want to get tested every year to find out if you're dying or sick. But the reality is that healthy people don't get sick. That is truly the case. Okay? All right, so let's move on. So polyps, you can get rid of them. Just change the environment. What did Louis Pasteur say? The environment is everything. The terrain is everything. Focus on the terrain. Don't trying to get rid of the bug, because right now the polyp would be the bug. I know it's not a bug, but it's something that you grew, and you only grew it because the environment was unhealthy. What happens if you had a healthy environment? Would it go away? I can tell you this, that it would. Spasm. Well, understand something. Oh, I got a spasm. Oh, I got a spasm. Well, understand, every time that you have a spasm, your intestine is in spasm. And the more that it goes into spasm, the more inflamed it is, and the more beef jerky it's going to be. And we already talked about that. That if we have to go in there and use Wolfe Non-Surgical to try to get that open and to get you on a better diet. But guess what? If you don't want to do surgery first. But some people will just want to opt for surgery. Get rid of it. Get rid of it now. And I understand. That's your choice. That is your choice. Okay? So next thing. Colitis. Well, there you go. Now you've got that beef jerky spasm down in the lower part of the bowel. And now you've got impaction. You've backed up all that waste. Okay? And do you know how many people live like this? And they live like this for almost their whole life. And we don't have to. Colitis means inflammation of the colon. And you wouldn't have colitis if you didn't have constipation. And with colitis, you are going to get diarrhea. And the colitis is going to move into mucosal colitis because of the inflammation. You're creating all this mucus. That's going to be coming out. And then eventually you'll have bleeding colitis because now you've got ulceration that's eating into the lining. And now you're going to see blood. All right, let's move on. So stricture. Now a stricture is where, now do you see how it's really thin on one end and thin on the other? That's not great. And this is when people cannot poop no more. And this is not great. If you can't poop, your life is in jeopardy. So you can go to surgery, or you can try to go on the perfect day, get Wolfe Non-Surgical, do pelvic squats, clapping, belly button therapy. You know what? Just remember, you go for surgery. After you heal, you'll still need to get Wolfe Non-Surgical because that scar tissue will be immense because surgery creates more scar tissue because the body always overcompensates. When the body's inflamed or when it feels terrorized, it creates way more scar tissue than it should. Then we've got to go in there and clean up the mess. Next, prolapse. We talked about that already. So that's where the transverse colon falls down, creates a valley, and it falls on top of all the other organs. And just think of the slow, stagnant transit time for your poop by the time it gets out. You can change this, believe it or not. We do what's called an abdominal lift. And whether you want to believe this or not, we could take that transverse part that's red and we could actually lift it up by 3 inches in the first treatment. You'll actually feel it. And we're doing it in a loving way. And understand, then you need to start doing the proper exercises, proper diet, if you ever want it to come up. Remember something. Sometimes you're so tired, you feel like your face is falling down. You feel like everything is falling down. It's all about tone. And don't ever forget, your large intestine is a muscle, and that muscle has lost its tone. And if we bring back the circulation, we'll bring back the tone. We'll bring back the life. We can do this. And your colon is like a snake. So here they're called hostras here. So this squeezes, this squeezes, this squeezes, this squeezes, this squeezes, and it moves everything along. But what if there's no tone left for the squeeze? What if it just gets so inflamed that it squeezes like a fist and it doesn't allow poop to get by it? What if it chokes down on itself? That can happen anywhere in the body. If you get too much inflammation, you get too much contraction. When you get too much inflammation, you get too much glicky, sticky uric acid, lactic acid, calcification coming in, walling it off, and then the scar tissue wrapping it up, and then you get a block. Everything is about a physical block. Remember something, anywhere that you feel pain in your body, you've got a physical block, whether it's a calcium problem, scar tissue, or crystallization, or all of them. Right, and we always have a mental block before a physical block. Okay? So just know that you can reverse these things. And then, of course, prolapse with pressure on lower organs. Well, of course, come on. Everything's falling down. You're crushing those organs. Man, you got so much trouble coming for you. I mean, life is a burden. I mean, what does it feel like to be a prisoner held in a physical body? You've created your own invisible prisons. And that's right. They're invisible bonds that bind you and they blind you. And understand something, nobody wants to be held prisoner. You know, if I had to be held prisoner in my body, I understand why people, and I do understand, so please don't take this wrong. I understand why people want to end their life. Because nobody wants to live in pain and suffering. And I'm telling you right now, it's like nobody has any answers. All the greatest minds in the world have no answers. Well, that's because you're never going to have the answer until you understand you are the answer. And that's the God's truth. And then we'll take a look at external and internal hemorrhoids, everybody. Okay? All right? Rectum. Pain almost killed them, right? Okay. Well, just understand something. Hemorrhoids are from many things. Okay. Constipation, which is absorption of waste, which is concentrating the waste, and it's weakening the rectal tissues, right? Do you get that? And also, you're pushing down with your diaphragm to try to get your poop out because it's stuck. So between trying to push down and from so much infection from absorbing the waste and having so much physical pressure in there from being constipated, so chemical, physical pressure pushing down blows you out. So you blew it out. It's like the same thing. The bulge, right? The bulge that we call diverticuli in the large intestine. Well, there's a bulge that is sticking out of your bum, or it's just inside your bum that you blew out because it got poisoned and you pushed and it got thin, the muscle got thinned and there was no tone to the tissue. End of story. There's hemorrhoids. So I can understand, you know, if they're painful, you want to get them cut off. But the reality is if you don't change your diet, there's always going to be a riot going on inside of there. Okay, here we go. So here's the problem, guys. Inguinal hernias, they're like the greatest epidemic going on right now, and that's because of pelvic rot. Remember I said you're rotting out, and it's the God's truth. Okay, so you have what's called the peritoneum, and it holds everything in. Okay, and that peritoneum is giving away and rotting out. And so you see the sigmoid and cecum? Well, you're looking at the intestines bulging through because the lining has given out, and that is an inguinal hernia. So understand something. When you get started with this, you can actually repair it. But if it gets to the point like on the sigmoid side, that's not good. And the reality is If you've got an inguinal hernia, you better think about something. You better get sutures instead of mesh. If you get mesh, you're putting a foreign body in there and you're going to poison your whole pelvis area. And understand something, people don't get it. You could have headaches, you could have brain dysfunction, and you can have things going on in your body and you don't even know it's coming from the mesh that's down in your pelvis. And the mesh costs them $25, costs $2,000 to do the surgery. The pharmaceutical companies have pushed this onto doctors when they could be using dissolved sutures. You know, in British Columbia, where I live, my patients have to fly out of the province and go to Ontario to actually get the surgery, because they will not do sutures here, because they'll only do mesh because it's quicker. And guess what? The mesh is always an irritation. And when you put mesh in, it's like putting rebar into cement, and then the cement dries. You're stuck. You're stuck with that. Try to get that mesh out, and then you're stuck with it for life. Now, so if you've got mesh, you're still going to be okay, but you better get into the perfect day. You better learn how to do daily cleansing. You better learn how to get into that landmine and retrain your brain, okay, that you have unlimited potential. But understand, you better bring up your vibration, because if your vibration stays low and you stay with the same diet that's causing a riot, and then you've got the mesh, you've got a big mess going on, okay? Because it's, you know, think about this. You ever have a sliver? The infection you get, the inflammation, well, guess what? What kind of sliver is that? Okay, there's problem down in River City. So you need to think about things. Okay, when we get fearful, we jump the gun. When we jump the gun, sometimes we do stupid things. And no longer will we be stupid. We are going to use common sense. We're going to connect to our breath. And the next time the doctor says, you do this now, get going, and he's creating all kinds of fear, you stay connected to your lion heart breathing. And then if you want, you can call me and I'll tell you what I would do if I was in your situation. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it, because this is your life. This is your body. This is not about me trying to prove them wrong. This is about me saying you can go with them, or you can try something else that's not as evasive and something that's not as dangerous. But if you need to go do that, you do that. But while you're trying to go to do that, can we go and try to love ourselves well, just for the fun of it, just for the love of it? I want you to think about it. Okay, so a rectal prolapse. And let me tell you something. This happens more than you think. This is where you actually lose tone, and the inside lining of your rectum actually comes out. I'll tell you something. I had a lady that came to me, and her intestine would come out by about 7 inches. And understand something. She came to me the first time, and it was still pink. She came back to me the second time, and I'm not going to tell you how it happened. That's not the point. But the reality is, the second time she came back, it was gray. And I said, the only thing you can do is go for surgery. It's actually died. Okay? The first time we helped you and we got it up there, you should have stopped doing what you were doing. And you understand something. When your rectum falls out of your butt, okay, you need to understand that your tissue is dying. Okay? It is pulling away from itself. And why is it dying? Well, I'm going to tell you something. You can have somebody that has any type of pelvic problem or rectal problem like this, and you can restore it. It's all about returning circulation, getting rid of the infection. And I know the tricks. I've been doing this forever. I'll tell you, we'll have people coming here that are in so much pain they can't even hardly walk. They need help. And that's because they either have a prostate problem, they have a uteral problem, ovarian problem, bladder problem, or they have a rectal prolapse, or they just have hemorrhoids so bad internally and externally. And this can all be turned around. You are the greatest healing mechanism in the world. Please do not give up on you. You are not broken. You are not broken. You are amazing. And just know that. Okay? A rectal fistula. Okay. All right. So do you know what a rectal fistula is? Okay. A rectal fistula is where you actually have waste sitting in the last part of your large intestine, and it creates so much acid and chemical and ammonia-like, and it eats a hole into your tissue. And if you're a woman, it will actually be dripping this fecal waste and liquid into your vagina. Okay, so women will actually wipe themselves from urinating, and they will smell it or see it. Okay, they don't smell it, but they can smell it. And understand something. If you're a man, it's just going to be going into your pelvis. But if it's a woman, you're going to infect the whole vaginal canal and everything in there. So understand, this is nothing to mess with, okay? We need to be on top of this bowel, large intestine, immune system situation, all right? And then let's talk about a fissure. A fissure is like a crack, and it's like a crack near in between your rectum and your anus. And what it is it gets, because it gets so dried out, okay, so dried out, and then the dripping of the chemicals come down and irritate and dry out the anal area. So when the poop comes, it cracks it, because it's supposed to have moisture, it's supposed to have flexibility, it's supposed to have elasticity. It's not supposed to be beef jerky and fried out from the chemicals of the putrefaction of the waste that's been lodged inside of you. Okay? So all of this can be replaced, and there's things that you can do to help to heal this really quickly. So understand, you don't have to live like this, guys. And if you want to do drugs to do it, do drugs to do it. Or you can call on nature's pharma, and we'll get right to it. Okay? So you have a choice. And we talked about SIBO earlier. So there would be the ileocecal valve. Inside you see the small intestine. Then it goes to the large intestine. And basically, you backed up your waste in the large intestine into your small intestine, and now you've got small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And everybody tries to attack it from the mouth, taking lots of things, which is great. I get it. But you've got to get the large intestine in gear. And the problem is there's a lot of people that their ileocecal valve stays open, and we can actually close the ileocecal valve in 3 to 5 minutes, and it'll stay closed. Why? Because it's inflammation and crystallization that keeps it open, or scar tissue. And by doing Wolfe Non-Surgical, we can close it just within minutes. I kid you not. And then we'll show you how to keep on doing it to make sure that that door closes when it's supposed to. I like to think of the large intestine as a river, okay? All right? And understand something. That river needs to flow in the right direction. And if it doesn't, okay, or something detours it, okay, there's going to be a flood. And when you flood things, okay, all right, people can die. So let's talk about this. The large intestine, okay, if you take a look at this slide right now, let's first look at a slide, and let's talk about women for a second, all right? Now, if you take a look at the slide on the left that says normal, okay, take a look what's in the pelvis, everyone. Okay, you've got your uterus, you've got your ovaries, you got the bladder, okay, you got the pubic bone, okay, you've got the urethra, you've got the vagina, okay, and then look at here, we got the rectum, okay, so understand something. Rectum, it almost killed them. So now take a look at the right picture, okay, look at that. Now this, believe it or not, okay, is the majority, okay, of women and men, but we're talking about women right now. So understand that. The world, or at least North Americans, I won't speak for everyone, like, that are eating high fiber diets and that are getting lots of exercise and lots of structured water, okay, and living a life of more sanity, let's say, okay. But let's talk about the majority of North Americans, okay. The majority of North Americans are constipated. Now, when you're constipated, okay, that does not mean you don't go to the bathroom. It means you backed up traffic. Now, sometimes I think, did God play a little trick on us? Because guess what? When your intestine, okay, large intestine, and when the last part of your large intestine, or even the middle of it, or the beginning of it, get impacted, do you know what happens? You absorb your own waste. Now, as I was saying about the river, everything flows downstream. And understand something, I already said that when you detour that river, it might not give you what you want. And what's that being? Health and life? No, it'll give you won't be at ease. You'll have a disease. And understand, you'll have infection, you'll have inflammation, scar tissue formation, crystallization, calcification. But take a look at the fecal mass that's backed up there. Now, isn't this something? You know, that's why I say, did God play a little joke on us? Look where the uterus is. Look where the bladders are. Look where the ovaries are, the urethra. Okay, the fallopian tubes. They're all sitting in the same neighborhood. Okay, so understand something. What is the most important thing that a woman can do is to make sure that she has a great poo. And understand, make sure that she has at least 2 of them a day, and maybe even 3. And they can even be just slightly on the mushy side. Because if you keep that clean, you're going to keep your whole pelvis clean. And whether you want to believe this or not, I'm going to tell you right now, 95 to 98% of all the surgeries, all the cancers, okay, all the scar tissue, all the inflammation, all the pain that you're suffering in this pelvic area could be avoided if you were voiding, if you were eliminating, and you were doing it on a continual basis. And this is why I talk about the daily cleansing tea, the black gold, and the tummy love. Oh my gosh, just do these 3 things, these 3 pillars. Let me tell you something. If you don't want to have painful periods, if you don't want hip replacement, if you don't want fibroids, endometriosis, bladder infections, painful lovemaking, okay? If you don't want, okay, low back problems, and guess what? Don't you dare think that when you absorb this waste from the large intestine, of course, I mean, the area closest to the impaction, okay, where the waste is constipated, waste, that's the area that's going to be the most toxic. And guess what? Your pelvis is the holy grail. Don't you ever forget this. All right, you women, if you have the time, please take a look at my I Am Woman Masterclass. You really want to get into that and delve into it, and you'll find out that mankind has manipulated you into constipation, infection, inflammation, and mutation. And understand this. Take a look at this next slide. Oh, so here's the uterus, okay? There's the ovaries. So guess what? What do you think an ovarian cyst is for? An ovarian cyst is just a storage tank for the pus and the infection, because if you didn't have the cyst, you'd have cancer already. And understand something. You know how you can get your uterus and your ovaries removed? Well, what did they used to call that when they used to do that to a dog? Spading a dog. Why would they spade the dog? Well, they didn't want the dog to have children. Okay, I mean children. Didn't want the dog to have puppies. But the other thing is they would spade the dog, okay, all right? Or, I'll tell you something else in a second, but they'll spade the dog. Why? To calm it down. So understand something. You don't calm it down. You're numbing it out. You're dumbing it down. Because I'm going to tell you something right now. The uterus and the ovaries are command central for a woman. That is a generation station of energy, of hormones. And understand something. When your uterus and your ovaries get into trouble, okay, all right, and your pelvis gets inflamed, your breasts are going to be sore. They're going to be tender. Tell me I'm wrong. Women will get tender and sore breasts before their period because they're getting ready to detoxify and the toxins are going down to the pelvis. But because the pelvis is already congested, the alarms go off. That's right. The alarms go off. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. So understand something. You know, it's like this. What would they do to a horse? They'd make it a stud. If they wanted to calm it down, they would take its testicles, and it would be called a gelding, because that would calm it right down, wouldn't it? Well, what do you think happens when you take a woman's ovaries and uterus? It's not called calming them down. It's called numbing them out. And they actually used to do this with women that were hysterical, right? Okay? This world is a crazy place, and it's one crazy ride, I'll tell you that much. Okay, so take a look here. So what you're looking at right now is uterine cancer. And you can see it there just on the right. And understand something. So you're going to make cysts before you have cancer, but you're not going to get uterine cancer unless you have brought the oxygen level down in that area down by 35% for a few days or more. And understand something. When you choke things off, they don't want to die. So they mutate So they can live off of sugars, and they can live off of lactic and uric acid and all the acidity that's down there, because there's tons of it. So it's just your body wanting to survive. So as soon as you change your personality, right, parts of your personality, and create a different day for yourself, like the perfect day, you're going to have perfect tissue. But the other thing is the issues in your tissues were caused in your mind. And if you're not willing to go in and change those, then how do you do that? Because you have to understand, like I said earlier, that thought form creates physical form. All right, let's move on. So remember what I was just saying? Pelvic inflammation. It's like, when you've gone to the fair. When you go to the fair and you get that hammer and you come down and you hit it down, ding. Okay, and then where do you think the breast tenderness comes from? Well, that's because you went and have pelvic inflammation, which you have contamination and infection that's leaking from your large intestine. And so guess what? When that happens, we already know you've been backing up plaque and waste in your large intestine, so your lymph is unable to dump. So now the lymph nodes under your armpits are getting swollen and congested, and your pelvis is inflamed. So boom, your breasts go boom, and it's called a wake-up call. And understand something, if you don't want to look after that, then they'll keep on getting inflamed, and then you'll start getting a scar tissue issue in there, and then you'll start getting crystallization in there, and then you'll start getting calcium deposits. And when you start getting calcium deposits in your breast, it's called, hey, we're getting closer to cancer here. Can somebody please wake up and go downstairs, all right, and clean the mess? Because you fill from the bottom up. You fill from the bottom up. You need to get this. You fill from the bottom up, everybody. Okay? All right. So understand something. Prolapse bladder. Did you know that 49% of the female population leaks urine? Do you know how many people can't urinate? They have to get up. They go to the bathroom. They might go 3 to 5 times. They can't sleep at night because there's that irritation, inflammation in there. Okay, and then they get up and they struggle through the darkness and they bang their toe. They get to the toilet. Wait. 3 or 4 drops come out. Well, what do you think happens? Like I told you earlier, you're just reabsorbing your waste. That waste goes throughout your system, goes through your kidneys, and now it's held. It's held. Where is it held? That waste is also sediment in the bottom of your bladder, irritating, inflaming the bladder, causing it to contract on itself. Did you ever get hit with something and then you just wanted to curl up? Well, that's what it wants to do, just curl up to protect itself. And it doesn't want to expand because that hurts it to expand. Just like I can't move my arm, so I got to keep it still. Well, it doesn't want to expand because it's causing a problem. But here's the deal. It's not even that. Your large intestine's falling down. And it's falling down, causing pressure. So the more that you lack tone, the more that things fall down. And so a prolapsed bladder is a bladder, okay, that needs to go to the gym. But how do you get it to the gym? You got to detoxify it to give it enough energy to work out. And that would be to hold the urine again, okay? All right, so you can see you've got your uterus, okay? And then you've got your bladder, okay? And look where the bowel is. So understand something. I'm right. Almost 100% of all bladder problems, okay, and any type of pelvic problem is from the large intestine, okay? And that's the bottom line, okay? So scar tissue in the fallopian tubes. Now, I'm going to tell you this, and this is a true story, okay? So we have people that come to us from all over the world, and where she's got scar tissue in her fallopian tubes, or his swimmers aren't that strong, and it will only take us sometimes a few weeks to a few months, and boom, they're pregnant. So understand something. You've got scar tissue in your fallopian tube, just like you have scar tissue everywhere else. You've got inflammation in your fallopian tube. So what do you think happens? Now scar tissue grows there. I told you that. Wherever inflammation is, the body's going to make fibrin, send the fibrin there to try to isolate and lock down that inflammation so it doesn't turn into mutation. So scar tissue formation is better than mutation, isn't it? How would you like to have, that's why you look at grandpa and he's walking and he can't hardly move, or grandma, and you go, are you okay? I don't feel a thing. That's right, because the scar tissue has locked down all the pain and inflammation. The calcium from their bones has left their bones, and it's locked it all down. So the reality is they don't have their health anymore, but they're not dead. Because if it wasn't for the calcium, if it wasn't for the scar tissue and the crystallization, they would have mutated and died. And I'll tell you something right now. You might not have heard this before, but I'm absolutely right, and I don't mind being challenged, okay? So now if you take a look at men, the same situation is happening. I just want everybody to understand something, that in the next 5 years, prostate cancer is supposed to go up a beautiful 400%. Think about that, 400%. And understand something right now, as I speak, doing this here, I just thought I'd let you know that right now I have 8 prostate cancer patients I'm working with, and I probably have about 20 to 30 prostate patients that have inflamed prostates and they can't pee properly. Okay, so there, if you guys want to talk about an epidemic, the epidemic is actually coming from the large intestine. There's the epidemic. And understand something, people that are healthy do not get viruses. People that are healthy do not have fungal infections. People that are healthy do not have bad bacterial problems. Understand something, healthy people are healthy. Sick people are sick. And sick people are toxic. And they can be toxic emotionally and physically. And understand that. And this doesn't make people bad, but they might have bad beliefs. And those bad beliefs are causing lots of problems. And when it comes to men, they are not open-minded. Women are open-minded. Thank God for that. The world wouldn't even exist right now. But the reality is, let me tell you something. You may not like this, everybody. Especially you men. I meant not men, everybody, but men. And that is this. I have a technique where you can use a rectal vibrator and you can use other things and do other things. And if you want, okay, whether you've got a bladder problem, testicle problem, pelvic problem, prostate problem, you can turn that around. But you're going to have to take massive personal action, okay, and get the blinders off and not live in some little box. And understand something. The day that we stop thinking that a drug, which is toxic, is going to heal us, you know what? I could count on one hand probably of all the drugs that actually do what they should do is heal us. Hey, listen, I'm not against drugs. I'm telling you, if it's going to save someone's life or if it's going to bring the pain and the inflammation down, that we can calm things down. But what about bringing health back to that person? What about getting rid of the issues in the tissues and looking at the issues in the mind that caused that landmine in the first place? All right. So, inflamed prostate. So take a look at it, guys. So if you take a look, you've got your bladder, urethra, and then there's your prostate gland. Now, when this thing swells, it's not a pretty thing. You know, well, and I'm not laughing, but we'll have like every 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have somebody walk in here that can hardly walk, that need help, that their prostate's so inflamed they can barely walk. Now, the reality is by the time that they walk out, and even if they don't come to me, if they work with me long distance on Skype or by phone, it doesn't really matter. Listen to me, everyone. You don't have to come to us. The reality is this. You know, we do consultations. We charge $125, so you know there's not profit there. But the reality is we can Skype you, we can FaceTime you, we can just call you. It doesn't matter. There's so many ways to do this. And understand, information, correct information, is what's going to get rid of the inflammation, the mutation. It's going to give you back your life. So, you know, you want to create the perfect day. So you men, if you don't want to take action and change your day, change your mind, the way you do things, then it's not going to turn around. And understand something. I already told you that the pelvis is the holy grail of energy. All right? So you might want to start doing your homework. This is the end of part 10, rotten to the core. We will see you in part 11. Surgery is the last option.